So, any of you guys finished the Cannonball 550? Yeah. Hey, and welcome to This Is Gravel. I am Bobby Thompson, and with me, as always, is
Neil Taylor.
Neil. What's been going on?
Oh, a lot of riding in the wind, it seems like, is what's been going on.
There's been a lot of wind lately. It's windy again today.
Yeah,
yesterday.
it feels like the spring almost in Kansas instead of the fall. And I don't know.
You got to get in shape for Christmas.
Correct, yes, so I can ride during the winter.
Right.
That's what I do. What have you been up to, Bobby?
Oh, you can't get off that easy.
Yeah, I can.
Well, we've both been riding quite a bit.
Yes.
We 2-3 weeks ago I had Bleeding Kansas, which didn't go as planned. Flats on the downhill during time sections, and what was the other thing I did? I dropped the chain on a downhill during a time section. So yeah, I think I was 25 minutes off the lead, so it was definitely didn't go how I planned. But it was a great day, fun event. Got to go to that event. Now, as far as the other thing goes,
We don't speak of this other thing.
we had the Cannonball 550. Has it been? It's been almost 2 weeks already.
Yeah, by the time this airs, it'll be 2 weeks.
Yeah, it'll be 2 weeks already. So, first, what do you think about it? First impression.
That was rough. Now, granted, I think it was made rougher than maybe it should have been, at least on day one.
Okay, let's set the stage real quick.
Yes.
Set the stage. So we all line up at the Granada Theater, and anybody with a loosely fit jacket or a umbrella possibly was blown down automatically blown down the street.
Yeah.
So we had 30-mile-per-hour gusts of wind coming down Main Street.
Higher than that. Yeah, I'm gonna say Matt looked it up later. It was over 40.
Okay, so we had 100-mile gusts of wind coming down
100 mile, yeah.
coming down Main
Sounds good.
Street, and someone says, "Okay, you guys can go." Because that's how we all started, right?
Yes.
It was Matt Slater saying,
It was like, really?
Yeah.
And he's like, go.
right. So I'm standing over. I still got coffee in my hand. Nothing started. And I'm like, oh, crap, because everyone's rolling out. And seriously, and you agree.
Oh,
With these winds, you want to get behind someone immediately and hang on.
And that's what we were trying to do
Right.
on Main Street until we got to 4th Street. And the light changed and we lost the lead group.
And the light changed in the lead group, which is funny, a lead group for a 550-mile ride.
Yeah.
But it was when we got split into two right off the bat. And so there was no recatching that group after that light. And so we had basically two main groups that was rolling out of town against this wind. And I think for the most part, I would say for the most part, most of us were able to stay together the first 30 miles into that wind, 20 miles into that wind.
Right before Texaco, I think.
Yeah, right before
most folks lost
we
it.
took the big climb up Texaco Hill. And that pretty much separated everybody out. And from that point on, it was just you'd roll into a gas station and
You rolled
see
into
who
gas
was
stations out
behind
there?
you.
Didn't see a whole lot of those.
No. So it was overall experience.
It was awesome. I just, again, it was a tough day. I'll be honest with you.
Tough day.
It's not an exaggeration when I say that when I think of the toughest days I've had on a bike, that was right at the top. And folks got to understand that first 92-ish miles that I did into El Dorado that day were all into that wind. That was 35 mile an hour, consistent, steady 35 mile an hour
wind. It was a south-southwest wind, and we went entirely south-southwest.
Yeah, we had a whole mile and a half, I think, of going north at different points. But otherwise, it was straight into that wind. And it was awful. I mean, I didn't realize that Matt had brought a flute with him on the trip, but Matt had put aero bars on his bike.
You didn't cover up the little under things, did you?
No, he did not.
Yeah, you got to use tape for that, otherwise it whistles the entire time.
So at Texaco Hill, we stopped and we taped him up because it was so loud, the whistling. It was just driving us insane. It's like, dude, we're stopping. Let's take some video and tape those up. And so I got the electrical tape and started taping. He was videoing in. But I mean, that's just how bad the wind was blowing. It was awful. I've never experienced wind like that. And then to make it worse, I mean, it was hot that day too.
Yeah, it was hot. It was above 90, and I would imagine that it was closer to the mid 90s that day.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone would dispute that.
And
GPS said 102.
102 on his GPS. So
Wow.
definitely, it was a hot, dry day.
And what I think I learned, I mean, you talk about learning and things that we can take away from it, what it's like to get on the bike that second day. If I had put out what we had anticipated or wanted to, 140-mile effort, I'm sure I would have felt just as awful as I felt, going 90 miles into that kind of wind. And so to know what it feels like to get on that bike that second day, because, usually we go out and we do land run or we do Maisies, and we don't get on the bike Sunday.
Yeah.
You put the bike away. You don't want to see the bike because you just killed yourself for 100 miles. Well, I hadn't really ever done much of that, and so it was a learning experience, maybe biting off more than I could chew to start. But just to be honest, I think I let my head get me a little bit too. Looking at the forecast for the rest of the week, I mean, those guys fought that wind every day.
There was not a day without wind. All 5 days for some.
I mean, it might not have been those gusts of 40, 45 miles an hour, but it was tough. And so for the 8 folks that finished or whatever, I mean, that's just an unreal effort by those. But for the 8 that finished, there was, almost 16, 17 of us that said, we'll see you next year.
Yeah. Football was on Saturday and Sunday, and I knew football was there waiting for me at home, and
I wasn't getting good service, so I couldn't watch while I was in the aero bars, and I had to make my choice. Absolutely. No, it was a tough time. What makes it even more unreal is the fact that you and me, I know we're out there, we experienced that. And I mean, we're not top tier riders, but we're not slouches, I would say, either. What makes it unreal is how fast Andrew went.
And Katie.
And Katie. I mean, really, they went so fast to be able to complete that. What was it, 2 days? How long did it take him to finish that thing?
Yeah, it was 2 days and change.
I mean, unreal to think 550 miles that quick. And I know Matt had a chance to talk with Andrew and Katie to hear about their experiences, and I can't wait personally myself to watch this and hear about it too, because maybe I can just learn a little bit from the things that they share with Matt.
Hey, thanks Gravel Guru followers for watching us today online. Today we are joined by Andrew and Katie Strumke, first and second place overall of the Kansas Cannonball 550. How are you guys doing?
Good. How about you?
Doing good. I think you guys obviously had a lot better weekend than the followers on the show have heard from Bobby, Neil, and I about how our weekend went. I guess so just diving in, why did you guys choose to do the Kansas Cannonball?
Well, it's close for us. We're in Olathe, Kansas, so the suburb of Kansas City, so we're an hour away from Emporia. So it was too close to miss. We were looking for more opportunities to test our setups and experiment with some of these multi-day races.
Very cool. And you guys are not new to multi-day races. What are some of the other events you guys have taken part in throughout the years here?
Well, we are kind of new to multi-day races. Okay. If you think about it, we've done a lot of touring before, but as far as bikepacking racing, the only other bikepacking race we've done is the Colorado Trail.
Okay.
Which Andrew did really awesome, and I attempted. But yeah, that was beautiful too.
Mm-hmm. And I guess kind of diving into that, the touring concept comes up a lot to a lot of people. How did you look at this event maybe different from a bicycle tour? Did you go out there with the mindset that we are going to start and just be done as quick as we can and to truly race it? Or was that just kind of something that developed through the weekend?
Yep. I think we took this as an opportunity to treat it as a race and try pushing ourselves just as a race. Initially, I kind of looked at it as, I think, more of a tour, and I was planning out where I was going to sleep and where I was going to stop. And then I started to think about it more, and the idea of kind of riding through the night and maybe just surviving off a few naps was intriguing to me. So that was the direction we took.
Okay, very cool. I guess kind of diving into the weekend, we saw a little bit of all of the Kansas weather it can join. What was it like? What was going through your mind, I guess, Friday morning at 7 there when we got ready to roll out of Emporia?
Well, it was a lot windier than it normally is in the morning. So we knew we'd be in for a windy day because in Kansas it only gets windier from the morning. But that wind being single speed, uh, for both of us, it made it not so bad because it kind of evens the playing field between us and the geared people as long as we don't turn around. Which was kind of the case by the time we turned around, the wind had died down and then switched into a headwind. So that was kind of how the first part of the day went, and then into the evening weather-wise.
Yeah, and it was hot, but I only really realized how hot it was when I turned with the wind, and all of a sudden I didn't have any cool breeze, and so then I was kind of almost wishing for a headwind when I turned and had a tailwind for a minute. So it was pretty hot.
Yeah, it definitely got hot out there. I was definitely never on my day on Friday looking for more of a headwind. It got us for sure. So, looking ahead, you make it into Cassidy, you make it to El Dorado, and that's kind of, I think, when the wind started to shift for you guys that day. Did you guys have any experience with the storms there Friday night? Because that was kind of a talk of the day, as we all knew there were supposed to be severe storms out there at some point, and that led into Saturday. So did you guys have to fight many storms or get caught out there at all?
I left Newton, and it was clear, but I could see storm clouds building kind of behind me and on the sides, or I guess east and west of me. And those eventually caught me about 10 o'clock at night. But I think they may have caught Katie a little bit earlier out of Newton.
Yeah.
But as soon as they caught both of us, the roads north of Newton were pretty much dirt. And so we found ourselves walking because it was just like instantly everything was mud, and there was no choice but to carry your bike. It was just like the softest mud.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for me,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry. For me, right out of Newton, I was headed towards some storm clouds, but I knew that it was going to storm all night, so I figured might as well keep going and find shelter if I get caught in a storm, which I never had any thunder or lightning that first night, just some like quarter-sized hail, which was kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
But the road that I was riding on went from dirt to mud like instantly when it started raining. And then I had some other riders behind me asking about like, what was up with those tracks like that came out of nowhere? It looked like somebody got through, and then all of a sudden in the middle of the road, there's these, shoe prints. Mm-hmm. And that was me after that storm.
You guys were pretty much out of the mud by daylight on Saturday though, right?
Yeah, I was just walking overnight, a few hours during the night, but then from like 2 a.m. I was riding and it was clear. And so, there were some soft sections after that, but that was the only time I had to get off and walk.
And really kind of after you got through Lindsborg, I think the mud had kind of cleared up at that point and the roads went back to normal. What was that next, 300 miles like? I mean, was it just a lot more just fighting the wind, or what was kind of the next 30 hours of this journey like for you guys?
Yeah, the wind kept switching. So we had a headwind for, 450 miles, something like that, out of the 550. That was guessed. So the winds kept shifting. Saturday we had kind of drizzly wet weather with some storms rolling through. And then Saturday afternoon was just like a heavy mist. And it was, it was crazy. It was just, my head was foggy. I'd been up for, 36 hours at that point, and it was foggy outside, and I just felt like I needed to just sleep because it was so sleepy outside. And that mist just went through the whole Saturday night, like just foggy, misty, like my arms were just dripping with mist. So yeah, the weather was a lot cooler on Saturday, and then Sunday it warmed up again. And south wind was right there for the ride into Emporia.
Yeah, for sure. How about you, Katie?
Yeah, I think the most bizarre thing was on Saturday night, that mist, the fog. Like the visibility was so poor, and I was going between Junction City and Alma. There's kind of some windy roads there. So the visibility was really poor. I had to run my light on low so that it wasn't just like reflecting straight back into my eyes. So by like 11 o'clock that night, I was like, okay, it's time to get some rest and see if the visibility clears up a little bit. So I did rest for, I think I was stopped for about 2 hours or so, and it cleared up a little bit, but not until it rained did the fog really clear.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. I mean, we were all watching the weather when we dropped out here. I mean, we had the dots pulled up on one screen and radar and all the weather stats up on the other screens. And it was literally throwing everything at you guys it could in that, 48, 50 hours out there type deal. I think it's worth mentioning to the viewers that, as much as we're interviewing you guys together, when was the last time you guys saw each other really out there on the course?
Like mile 7.
Yeah.
Did you guys, communicate much during the weekend, or how kind of maybe does the husband-wife dynamic work, when you guys are out there doing your own event and kind of you're both dialed in?
Well, we had set up Katie's bike single speed, and she'd been doing a lot of single speed riding recently, but she was trying to convince me that she was ready for single speed on 550. And so I was like, okay, we'll put the single speed gear on, even though it was the first like long distance race she'd done single speed. And so those first few hours we were hitting B roads, hills, we were going into the headwind, and I was like, I hope Katie's okay with the gear we put on her bike. Like I was hoping she was doing all right. And then I got into Newton and pulled up the tracker and saw that she was in second place. And I was like, oh, she's fine. She's single speed's great. It was perfect. So I didn't really know what was going on until about Newton. I pulled up the tracker, and then we were texting each other on and off, just seeing how we were doing. But I had my phone off until I got into each town, just to save battery. And so I would just, each major town pull in, check the tracker. She was still there. She was still just a few, I don't know. You hovered around 60 miles back for a long time. So
Yeah. So mostly just checking the tracker and saying, good job. And I hope it's not as muddy for you as it is for me. That kind of thing.
Yeah. That's really cool to hear. You talked about setting her bike up single speed. Let's get in. What type of equipment, what bikes, what did you guys take with you?
So I had a Focus Raven. It's a hardtail mountain bike, but I set it up with a cutthroat fork. So it was rigid. And then it's set up single speed. My gear was a 3616, set up with an eccentric bottom bracket.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. I've got a titanium frame from One Star Bikes in Kansas City, and I had that single speed with 4218. That's kind of my go-to Dirty Kansas Emporia gear. And we both had aero bars. I mean, with the headwind, I probably spent like 2/3 of my time in the aero bars. I was just camped out, laying down the whole time. I don't usually put aero bars on except for these, when it's going to go more than a day, then it's just like the additional position is way too much of an advantage to ignore. It's 20% for the aero, 80% just comfort staying off my hands.
Yeah, exactly. What type of camping gear, or did you guys take any camping gear? I know when you looked at bikes downtown that morning, like mine's fully loaded. It had the front roll on it ready to go. And, we were talking originally about spending 4 or 5 nights out there. When you came into town, I remember Andrew standing there at the Granada Theater and everybody goes, where's all your stuff? So talk about just packing a little bit lighter maybe.
Yeah. I just brought aside from normal riding gear, I had a bivy and a just really thin foam pad.
Okay.
So aside from just food and water, I had a rain jacket, a vest, a bivy, and a pad. And I think you had about the same, maybe with a down jacket.
Yeah, with a down jacket.
Just in case it got cool. The lows were going to be around 60, so we weren't too concerned about staying warm. If it was too cold, you just get up and ride more. But yeah, we really just brought kind of minimum to take naps and not really planning on staying out there for too long.
Okay. What did you guys do for nutrition? You know, were you using a lot of like goo gels you brought along beforehand, or were you kind of just fueling off what you could find at gas stations in towns along the way?
Started out with some like energy food, like some waffles and stuff, because they're super easy to pack, but mostly just stuff from gas stations, like corn dogs and pizza and all kinds of nasty stuff that you probably shouldn't eat on a regular basis.
Yeah, it was almost exclusively gas station food, and it was just a chore to eat as much as I needed to, and like super tired of eating by the, you know, after 48 hours or even less than that. Like, it's just like, oh, I got to keep eating. Just finding the amount of calories is hard. So yeah, bringing food from home would have required, you know, I don't know how many pounds of food. It wouldn't have been worth it, at least for me. So we just relied on food from the gas stations, candy bars, chips, sandwiches. I mean, anything you can find, anything that sounds good. You know, sometimes I rolled into a gas station and I was like, I am not going to buy a single sweet thing. Like, it's all going to be salty. Like, I just super tired of candy and whatever. So I don't know, you just kind of got to go in and see what sounds good, because otherwise you're not going to eat it. Like,
did you on this route, did you guys ever kind of run out of food, or, you know, roll into a town you expected to get food and nothing was open, or kind of what were some of those logistics like, thinking ahead?
Had kind of the mileage to each town mapped out, so we knew how much food we needed to take, just roughly. And there were a couple towns that we had planned on skipping, just because there were a few that were like 20 miles apart. Yeah. So I knew there were some bigger gaps, and usually just tried to carry a little bit extra food. I don't know if I ever ran out. Did you run out?
No, but I got pretty close to the end. I had like the perfect amount of food to get me to the end. We both ended up stopping in Topeka, which was a little bit off route, but not much, like a mile and a half, because there was a big gap. What was the town before that?
Maple Hill.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Maple Hill, just off I-70. That ended up being my last stop, because the Casey's in the next town was closed by the time I got there. So that was one of the things that we had to account for. That wasn't a stop that I was planning on making, but had to think about how much longer it would take me to get to that next town, and go off route and refuel there.
Yeah. Kind of speaking along the same lines, hydration, did you guys run out of water at any point, or did you guys, and what was your hydration setup, bottles or bladders on the bike?
Never ran out of water. I had a 100-ounce bladder that I usually had, I don't know, 3/4 full. Sometimes I filled it up if it was bigger stretch between towns. And then I had an extra bottle on the bottom or my down tube that was like Gatorade or Mountain Dew or whatever, just as a reserve for fluid or for energy.
Yeah, something to change it up a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, I ended up buying an extra liter bottle and carrying it with me on Friday and Sunday because it was pretty warm. I just felt like I needed that extra capacity.
Okay. Out of all the stuff you guys packed or took with you, was there anything you maybe didn't take that you wish you had, or vice versa, something you took that you never needed on the route?
I never used my sleeping pad, and I only used my bivy once. So I don't know if I'd leave him behind, because it was kind of a, if all of a sudden I got wet and temperatures dropped, I wanted to have the bivy there just in case I needed to stay warm. But that was something I didn't get much use out of. Otherwise,
You dropped your speaker.
oh yeah, I dropped my Bluetooth speaker I don't know, somewhere near Newton, I think, and didn't realize it. And fortunately, Jeff Young picked it up, so thanks, Jeff. But I spent the whole route in solitude, no music, no riding partners. It was just me and the wind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that we both like bring on longer rides. Like, music doping is real.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bluetooth speaker is really nice because you're not, isolated from traffic. You just have it going, and
Yeah.
super nice, especially at night.
Okay.
You can hear the dogs or whatever.
Yeah. Anything you would have changed up, Katie, on what you took?
I don't think so. I felt like I had pretty much everything that I needed, and not a whole lot that I didn't.
Okay. Very cool. Kind of looking at your plan to go straight through, would that be, if you were to toe the line next year, is that your same plan to go straight through? Or would you try to tour it more? Or what would you do differently?
For me, so my goal was to finish on Sunday at 3 p.m., which no one did. So I think the nap plan would have worked if I was on that timeline, but having that extra night, I needed more sleep for sure. Like in the last 50 miles or so, I was just dragging so badly and had to stop several times. So I think being a little bit more flexible with my plan and accounting for the sleep when I need it, when things change. So that's something that I learned and that I would have done differently if I had another chance.
Yeah. You, Andrew, anything you would have changed up kind of on your plan, or just keep on riding?
Yeah, I would definitely approach it the same way with riding straight through with short naps. That seemed to work all right for me. I was getting drowsy towards the end, but as long as I could keep putting food in my face, I would stay awake.
Yeah.
But it seemed about right. If you can be somewhere near that 2-day mark is where you can get away with napping. At least for me, this was kind of an experiment. So I'd do it again.
Very cool. What would you guys tell somebody that was maybe new or interested in about kind of the ultra cycling like this? Would you invite them out to do an event like this to get their feet wet, or would you tell them to go off a little bit smaller of a ride, or what would you tell to someone new interested in this?
I'd say go for an overnighter if you haven't already. Like, just strap what you can to your bike, put the rest in a backpack. You'll learn a lot. Like, we weren't doing our first overnighters that long ago, and we just had backpacks, and it was like we got back from that trip, bought bike packing bags, because it was, that apparent that was what we needed. And then you just learn from doing. It's really easy to read stuff and tell yourself like, oh yeah, when I'm out on that bike packing trip, I'll definitely pack up my tent in 10 minutes and I'll just go. But getting out there and actually doing it and realizing how long some stuff takes and stuff you're missing, or, oh, I thought this bag fit my bike, but now it brushes my knees every time I cycle past. Like, you learn stuff pretty quick. So I'd say definitely an overnighter, but then an event like this is really cool because it's like there's towns every 50, 60 miles with resupplies. The terrain is, it's not easy, but it's not mountains. So, I think it's a really good intro to a multi-day event. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
Just listing out your gear ahead of time and setting goals, or knowing if you want to race it or if your goal is to finish.
Yeah, I think that was a big thing. What you mentioned about towns every 50 to 60 miles is, as much as it's not the mountains, there are still some long sections out there, but we also know there's a Casey's out there, or you're going to run across a farmhouse at some point if you need help. So just kind of that Midwestern hospitality, I think, with it. So I just want to thank you guys again for joining us on the show, and a huge congratulations for finishing the Cannonball 550 and fighting through the Kansas weather.
Yeah, thanks Matt.
Yeah, so I can't imagine doing as much night riding as they did, because just riding during the daytime on that second day with the rain and everything was a little bit sketchy enough. So we're just coming into, you talked about the first day, and they talked about it too. Just coming into Newton that night of the first night, it was a lightning storm for a good hour and a half, and I mean, we really, and well, Andrew rode through the dang thing, but those of us who stopped at Newton, we really lucked out, because that storm was right on the north edge of Newton, and we were coming into the south side of Newton, or it would have been a slugfest for all of us. I mean, there was a number of us who stayed just outside of Newton. There were some of us that stayed in Newton. There's some that stayed at Potwin. And if that had just been a little bit further south, that would have hit all of us. So that wind was crazy. The rain the next day, I got a little bit lucky. So when I woke up the next day, I didn't want to ride either. I knew at that point.
I understand.
And even though I'll say at the starting line, I was telling people I'm not doing the whole route, and I got called out on it. And yes, half of this is true. I was saying that I wasn't going to do the whole route because I didn't know what to expect, and I was nervous about doing the whole route. So that is true. But I was also saying I wasn't going to do the whole route because I didn't want to be gone from home for 4 days. At this point, my head was not in it to be gone for 4 days. So I knew I wasn't going to finish. So at what point do you pull the plug? And when I got up the next morning, I'm sitting at the coffee bar down there, eating a good breakfast. Everyone else, Nick Ligon, John Jury, Jeff Young, they looked miserable. Even though they had little fake smiles, they looked miserable. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm good. I'll just call Carrie to come get me here. But I got that look from all of them. And we've all seen that look before where we want to stop at an aid station that, dude, you got more in the tank. You should at least roll out. So I did roll out. And I'm glad I did, because I was fine. Once you got rolling again, the legs came back. It wasn't a 17 mile per hour average. It was another 12.
And that's another thing I think I got to get used to, is I'm not accustomed to going
10
12
miles an
or
hour.
10, on the bike. But as I watched a lot of these folks on track leaders, that's where they were at. That's
9.8.
just the standard.
The first day I was at 9.8 miles per average for 140 miles. And that's a long day. That's 14, 15 hour day. Second day was fine until they talked about going through the mud at night. Okay. I immediately thought of all those people. They were like 3 or 4 ahead of me, because it was so funny. Then I'll make this quick because I know this is a longer show, but I was an hour and a half behind my friend Jeff Young. He was in the mud. He hit the mud, and he was a mile into the mud when he called his wife and said, "That's it. By the time I get to Lindsborg, I'm done for the day." Yeah. She called me and said, "Jeff's getting picked up. Do you want to be picked up?" Okay, so this is a sign. This is the point where I probably need to be picked up. Hour and a half difference. I roll for another hour and a half. I come across the dry highway, and I see the mud ahead of me, and I'm thinking, oh, man, half mile over the hill, I see Jeff. It was about a mile. So in that hour and a half, him, 2 other riders had only gone about a mile. And so I can't imagine, and I saw it coming. So I was able to actually pedal through a lot of it. I have quite a bit of tire clearance, and by that time, an hour had gone by since they started.
Dried out a little
more. It
would
dry just a little bit more, so I was able to pick and choose. But people who did it at night, there's no picking and choosing. I mean, it would go instantaneous 3-inch deep sand, or 2-inch deep mud, and you have mud. It would have been an entirely unreal experience trying to ride that section at night. It was an 8-mile section, so I can't imagine. So overall, I had a fun time. I got picked up at Lindsborg. It was great restaurants there. It was great food there, great coffee there. Next year, I would love to plan in my head for 4 days and tour it. 140 miles a day is a good touring pace. So a big touring pace, but
big,
but conceivable.
Yes,
and daytime riding. So you can see everything. So, awesome experience. I'm sure a lot of you have done it. If you've done any tours or races of this sort, text us. Let us know your thoughts. I'll be curious to hear more experiences about it. I know a lot of my friends go out and do a lot of these big things. Jacob's Path, a friend of mine from Iowa, goes out and knocks these things out all the time. Kate knocks these things out all the time. So, love to hear about your experiences. Social media.
Speaking of
Talk a lot about
experiences,
us. Let's take some pictures from what you guys have been doing.
Hey, thanks, Bobby and Neil. We have a ton of great social media online on Facebook and Instagram using the hashtag #ThisIsGravel. These are some of our favorites we saw this week. Aaron sent in this photo, out riding 55 miles with 3,500 feet of elevation southwest of Dover, Kansas in under 3 hours. He says he's getting ready for the Maple Leaf Gravel Grinder in Baldwin, Kansas on October 26th. Matt was out with a little bit of sandy and muddy minimum maintenance roads near his hometown of Hebron, Nebraska. Russell was out hunting for some gravel in the Oklahoma City area. Peter got his bike packing rig out and headed out on an overnighter to the Lake Erie shoreline on the Canadian side. Greg got in 40 miles of southwest Missouri gravel with a county road creek crossing, 3 folks on gravel bikes and 3 folks on mountain bikes. Looks like a great time, Greg. Corey was out walking down the mudded roads of the Spotted Horse Gravel Ultra. Gary Owens was down in the Sedgwick County area racing the Hemi. And Catherine was out riding the roads around Iowa on the Spotted Horse Gravel Ultra. Thank you again to everybody that submitted photos using the hashtag #ThisIsGravel. Back to you guys.
Awesome, guys. We love seeing that. Looked like there was a little bit of mud some folks were experiencing up in Iowa, too.
Every year?
Every year, it
Spotted
seems
Horse
like.
Ultra?
Yeah. I'm hoping, for less mud in my life going forward. Having said that, I did register for Land Run here a couple weeks ago, so we'll see what Land Run 2020 has for us. You never know. We've had some good years the last few years.
Last year was perfect.
It was awesome. So, again, thanks for the pictures. Keep tagging everything. Gravel Guru or This Is Gravel, and we'll hope to see you guys next week.
Bye.